We are taping, and just as an opening, my name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated, and we're here today on the Intracoastal in West Palm Beach, downtown Florida. And I just want to make sure this is really sharp. Okay, that looks good. Okay, we did an identity piece. Okay, and we're here today interviewing a young lady by the name of, Miss, what's your name?
Jennifer Beckles.
Okay, Miss Beckles. And let's see, when is your birthday?
July 20th, 1956.
And what is your current address?
I live at 2775 10th Avenue North, apartment 103 in Palm Springs, but I prefer to use, for official reasons, my P.O. Box 18173, West Palm Beach, Florida 33416.
Okay, and what branch of the service were you in?
The Army.
Okay, and when was that?
I served from 1980 to 1992.
All right. What was your rank when you separated?
I was a Warrant Officer 1.
All right, and were you drafted or were you enlisted?
Enlisted, I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time?
In New York City.
Okay. Why did you join?
I always wanted to do something adventurous, and that was it.
Okay. Why did you pick that branch of service?
It seemed the most interesting, the one that would be more receptive to me.
So after you signed all the paperwork, where did you go for basic training?
I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Tank Hill.
Okay, and how long were you there?
I can't remember. It was a long time ago. Just a few months for basic. Actually, I was there for a longer period than most soldiers because while I was in basic training, my lung collapsed, and so I had to have surgery and have 2/3 of my right lung removed.
Oh boy.
And so I was on convalescent in the hospital, I think, for probably a period of a month, and then convalescing for another month, and then I went actually back into basic training with another cycle. So I can't recall exactly how long.
Okay. So tell me about boot camp.
Well, boot camp was interesting. We had the the World War II barracks at the time, so we were constantly polishing things, and we had separate barracks for the women and the men, and it was interesting. We had a lot of road marches, and I think I weighed 100 pounds. All 100 pounds of me. They warned me if I lost 1 pound, they would kick me out.
Really?
Yes, at the time they had weight restrictions.
Yeah.
And it was challenging, but nothing that I couldn't handle. My parents raised us in a strict environment, so you learn to show respect for authority, not to talk back, and to sit straight and pick up your feet when you walked. So it was nothing, wasn't a big challenge there.
As far as the discipline was concerned, huh?
Correct.
Gotcha. So how was the food?
The food was fine. I was always hungry, and my drill sergeants would yell at me, "Do you think you're going to eat all that food?" Well, sure enough, my tray was always empty, and I was still hungry. Did not gain a pound.
Wow. Okay. Very high metabolism, huh?
Yes.
All right. So after boot camp, where did you go? You were in Fort Hamilton?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Right. And what was your MOS?
At the time, I was a 71 Lima, an administrative clerk, and I continued my training there prior to going to my first duty station, which was at Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay, and how did you get to Fort Hood? How'd you travel there? By bus, plane, train?
I'm thinking. I believe we traveled. I believe I traveled by plane, but it's been a while. I'm pretty sure it was plane.
So what was it like when you got there?
Well, it was interesting. Excuse me. When I joined the army, I thought that it was would constantly be out in the jungle doing things like that. But it was just like going to a regular assignment where I worked in an office. But it was interesting.
And how long were you there?
I'm going to say approximately 1 year. Then I was transferred to, I was married and I went to join my husband in Japan.
Oh, he was in the service?
Yes, and that was 1981.
Okay, all right, okay. So you got to go and be with him.
Yes.
Cool. All right. By the way, what were your instructors like in basic training and tech school?
My instructors were always professional. They were always great. In fact, I learned that when I was in basic training, I had just wonderful instructors. And there was a little, I say a little woman because, believe it or not, she was shorter than I am. And she was one of my drill sergeants. And probably because of her, I'm still alive, because I was really trying to be a tough soldier. You know, women have the stigma of always being sick and having problems. And I was determined not to go on sick call. So in the middle of, it was January, and there was, in South Carolina, the weather was just a little erratic. So there would be snow on the ground in the morning and it would be sunny in the afternoon. But it was still cold at night. And I would have night sweats, but I refused to report it. And one day she noticed that there was something wrong with me and insisted that I go to the hospital to have myself checked out. And that's when they found out I was ill.
Oh, okay.
But no, they were always very professional, always very caring. And they could always almost read my mind, which was interesting to know that they were so caring that they took the time to pay attention to each trainee.
Right, right. Okay, so what was life like in Fort Hood in Texas?
Well, it was interesting. I enjoyed it.
You say you were there for a year before you went to Japan?
More or less.
Okay.
More or less.
So what was life like in Fort Hood?
It was interesting. It was, I can't recall specifically, but it was the big army base, and it was good.
What was it, like a regular 9-to-5 job, or?
Yes, actually it was sort of like that.
Okay. You ever go out on maneuvers or anything?
No, not at first, not at Fort Hood.
Okay. Did you learn how to shoot a rifle while you were in basic training?
Yes, I did.
Which one? M16?
The M16.
How'd you like that?
It was good. It was a challenge. I was nervous at first because I'd not had any prior training with weapons, but I did well.
All right, cool. All right, so tell me 2 of your most memorable experiences while you were in Texas. Give it up.
I can't think of any at this
Had
time.
to be something. Come on.
Well, I was there a short time.
So, did you go on leave? Did you? What city were you near?
Killeen? No,
Killeen, Texas?
Is that right? Killeen is not. Is that Texas? Fort Hood? I think it was Killeen.
Okay, did you go into town? Did you travel around? Did you go anywhere?
I didn't do much. I didn't have a car. I was just this new soldier,
Right.
just away from home, really for the first time. And
Did you go home on leave?
I just really can't remember. Wait a minute. I'm thinking. In fact, I did. I went to visit New York a couple of times, and I had my son while I was there. So. Yes, and I also, went to visit my husband's family in Mexico. So,
Oh, okay.
yes, there are so many things to remember.
I understand. Just take your time and just trying to jog your memory here. You know what I mean? Is that where your parents were in New York?
Yes, my father lived in New York. My mom was already deceased.
Oh, okay. All right, so you went and visited him on leave.
Yes.
And
my
when you had the
sisters.
baby, you just kept the baby with you?
Yes, and we took him back to New York to visit.
Right, okay. All right. So after your stint in Fort Hood, how did you get to Japan?
Yes.
How did you get there?
In a big iron bird. Yeah, I flew. We flew, and it was interesting from where we were in order to get to an airport with the larger carriers.
Right.
We had to take a small plane.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit unnerving.
They can be.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you flew to Japan into Tokyo, or where do you remember?
I don't remember, but I believe it had to have been an Air Force base.
Okay.
And then from there, we traveled by helicopter to Camp Zama, where I was stationed.
Okay. Now, was that on the mainland, or was that another island, or?
It was on the mainland.
Okay. All right. All right. So, why don't you tell me about that experience?
Well, that was a wonderful experience. We were in a city called Sagamihara, which is where Camp Zama was located. And that was really lots of fun and adventure for me. Excuse me, as I said, I was a clerk, 71 Lima, administrative clerk, and I worked in a skiff, which is a secret compartmental information facility. So it's like working in a vault, no windows or anything.
Okay.
And that was interesting, but Japan was very beautiful. And
Right.
so, we had the cherry blossoms and the Japanese culture. And I found the people very receptive there.
Uh-huh.
And I just really enjoyed that. And while I was there, I went for leadership training in Korea, where I won the leadership award. Went on for the jungle environment survival training. They call it the JEST training in the Philippines on a 10-person exercise, and I was the only woman because I thought this is what I joined the Army for, adventure, and that was just great. It was great.
Okay. Good for you. How long were you stationed in Japan?
I was there for 4 years.
Okay, well, I want to know more. So,
Okay.
just have at it. What was your job there, same, clerical?
I was an clerical work.
And did you live on base or off base?
I lived on base. I believe most people lived on base there. But I did venture out into, they call it the economy, the Japanese economy.
Right.
And because I am a small-bodied person, I was able to buy clothing out there, where the average Americans are a little bit bigger than Japanese.
Right.
It was, and my son and I had a great time there riding our bikes and interacting with the Japanese people.
Okay, so did the family, was it like a family situation? You lived in a house on the base?
Yes.
Your husband?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay. So anyway, all right, so tell me about it. Come on.
Well, it was really great. I participated in a few exercises. One of them was a joint exercise with the Japanese military
Right.
at Camp Fuji.
Uh-huh.
And it was just a wonderful thing. Trying to think of what else. I was selected from my unit. I felt honored to be selected from my unit to be the only person that went to the palace in Tokyo when President Reagan came to visit.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so
And so how was the food? How was that event anyway?
that event, it was interesting, but more so I remember the food in Japan. I was always adventurous and trying a little of everything and enjoyed everything there.
Okay.
I
So
even made friends that were Japanese who they didn't speak English and I didn't speak Japanese, so we had an interesting time communicating. I had my little dictionary, which gives you one word, which means nothing really. So it was interesting, and their culture is so different that one of the soldiers came to visit at my home,
right.
and I should say at our home, and didn't understand the shower curtains, so he took a shower with the curtain outside of the tub.
Oh boy.
And therefore, of course, we had a nice little flood going on.
Good news.
But, yes. But no, we just really had a wonderful time.
Right. Okay. Okay. So tell me about the food. you know, did you like sushi?
I love sushi.
Okay.
I love sushi, and they have sushi and sashimi.
Right.
One is a little more raw than the other one. I guess the sashimi is raw. I just enjoyed all of it, and they have a lot of the yakisoba, the noodle dishes, and the bentos, the different boxes with the variety of the noodles and different fried foods, and the tempura. Just lots of wonderful things. The eel, the barbecued eel, which was just absolutely delicious. I really enjoyed a lot of the culture there.
Right. Tell me about it.
Yeah, the people I found were very welcoming and very helpful. Traveling on the trains were an adventure because everything's written in kanji, the little characters that is their language. Excuse me. So at times I would be fortunate to find one person who spoke enough English to help me get where I wanted to go on the train. And as I said, that was always an adventure.
Right. Next thing I was going to ask you.
Oh, it was interesting that they sold beer in vending machines as well as hot coffee in a can in vending machines all over the place. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Where did you what cities did you travel throughout Japan? Did you get out and see all of it?
No, I didn't see all of it. I traveled to Atsugi, of course Yokohama, Tokyo, and that's all I could think of because I was always doing something and somehow leaving the country. So I came back to the States often.
Oh, did you?
With my son, yes.
And
so the family got to see him growing up.
Got it. So you always traveling back to New York, or?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So and what was school like there for him? There was a school on base?
He was a little tiny baby.
Okay.
So he went to the daycare, and just wonderful people and wonderful environments.
Were they military personnel, or was it Japanese civilians?
Oh, the installation was self-contained, so they had military family members ran the daycare facilities.
Okay. All right, so you said we were in Fort Hood for a year, you were in Japan for 4 years. Did you travel anywhere else in Asia while you were there?
Unfortunately, no, I did not. It makes no sense, but...
No, it happens.
It's just what happened.
It happens. Okay, so after anything else memorable you want to tell us before we move on? That happened in Japan? Any memorable experiences you want to share with us?
Oh, I just had a wonderful time there.
It's all good, huh?
Yes.
Okay, good for you. Okay, so where'd you go after Japan?
I thought I was bored with the Army, so I wanted to find some other adventure. So as I was in a military intelligence group is where I worked.
Okay.
They convinced me that I should try going into counterintelligence. So I came back to the States, where I went to Arizona, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, for counterintelligence training.
Okay.
And that was overwhelming at first. So I went from being a clerk,
right,
and now they took us into the school. The very first day, I thought, there's no way. They give you all these manuals that you'll have to know from cover to cover, huge things. And they started telling about all the covert information we'll have to learn about the different intelligence operatives, and just so much we had to learn. And some of our tests were actually conducted in vaults. They were so sensitive.
Some of your what?
The tests, the exams.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the very first day, I was just so nervous that it was just overwhelming. As I said, that
really,
my brain didn't want to function taking the test, as I thought, this is so much stuff. How am I going to ever learn it? So the very first day, my brain locked up on the first test we had, and I didn't even finish it. So the instructor said, "Why didn't you finish your test?" I said, "I just couldn't think." So he said, "Well, you have to turn something in." So it was just, I don't know how crazy that was. I just, we had maybe 2 minutes left, so I just filled in the bubbles and passed the test. So he told me that he would take me when he went to Vegas gambling, because there's no way that could happen. But after that, I learned to relax and take one day at a time, and I was able to be successful and graduate from the counterintelligence school.
Okay. So what did you do after school?
After school, I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Right.
Home of the 82nd Airborne Division. So I worked there for a while, and that was interesting. I was able to me, the most memorable time was when I participated in the SEER training. I can't remember what the acronym stands for.
Don't worry about it.
I think it's Search, Evasion, Rescue, and something else. But it was just training that was conducted for the pilots in case they were shot down.
Right.
And so we participated in that to a mock prisoner of war camp.
Uh-huh.
And it was sort of like a wake-up call. You know, you get to see some of the possibilities, because even though we were pretty rigid with these pilots, and it was just a training environment, you got to see some of the things that could go on, and just my imagination took over, because imagine what happens when it's a real situation, when these people are not going to be nice or kind to you. So it was interesting.
Okay.
And it was just devastating to me, because in the note, it still upsets me today to talk about it, where there was a plan.
You got to turn and look and see what's going on behind you.
Oh my God! Wow.
Okay.
Wow, I have never seen anything like it. Wow. Only in America. Wow.
Okay.
Woo. Well, that was an interesting diversion there from a devastating story. Wow.
You still have, I see, quite a few interesting things going on in your life.
Wow. So upon completion of the counterintelligence course, I was assigned in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I can't recall the unit. It might have been the 525 Military Intelligence Group. There it was very interesting. While I was there, I guess the highlight of that period, it was home of the 82nd Airborne Division. I was a squad leader, Sergeant E5, and several of the soldiers in my squad were airborne qualified, and I thought, well, why is it that I don't want to go to airborne school? But during that period, I was in the best physical condition ever. I really worked out hard and trained hard, and we had 6-mile runs, and I always hung in with everybody when a lot of, if not all, the women would fall out of the run, just couldn't keep up. So I went to my first sergeant and I asked him if I could go to the airborne school, and he said, well, Sergeant, I don't see why not. You're ready? And so I said yes. So I got my orders and headed down to Fort Benning. When I arrived there, I was in incredible shape, very strong, and I could do everything they asked me to do. I would call cadence for when we went on our runs in the morning with formation, and just helping to motivate the other female soldiers that were there. And then after all the training we finally had, the day came when we had to actually go into the towers. There were mock aircraft that were set up, and when we got up to the top, while the tech sergeants were demonstrating, I thought, oh, this does not look fun to me at all. I started feeling ill. So when it was my turn to jump out of the tower, I just froze in the door, and contrary to popular belief, They did not kick me or push me or give me any hassle. The tech sergeant eventually just came to me and told me that I needed to go out, that I saw that when they demonstrated, nothing happened to them. So eventually I said okay, and I got myself into a perfect landing fall position, which was your chin is tucked into your chest and your arms are pulled in at your side, and your knees, as you jump or exit the aircraft, your knees come up to your chest in a folding position like that. That way the risers, when they come out for the parachute, the straps, they don't scrape your neck and burn you. So I did a perfect PLF with a loud scream as I exited, and that was the end of training for that day. And that night, every time I closed my eyes, I had nightmares about jumping out of aircraft, so I didn't get much sleep. And when we went for part 2 of that training, I didn't go out of the tower again. Eventually, they just sent me home and told me I was allowed to come back for 6 months to resume my training if I so desired. Of course, I went back to my unit with feeling a lot of shame because I felt failure. And my first sergeant told me that no one would ever give me a hard time because at least I tried. I went there and tried, but I found that it wasn't for me because it's not for everyone. And it's really better to do it that way, because if it's not for you and you do something wrong, it's your life you're playing with. So that was that. And while I was there, I also got to go to some other training that they had for military intelligence. It was working at a resident office where we actually interviewed persons and conducted investigations and wrote reports as we would in a field environment. And that was very interesting. We were also a part of the training for the pilots in case they were ever shot down. There's a mock prisoner of war camp somewhere in a secret location where the captured prisoners are taken for training and tortured, simulated torture. And it was just an interesting wake-up call to see what, some of the possibilities that the pilots would go through should they be shot down in hostile territory. So after I left Fort Bragg, I went to the Defense Language Institute in the Presidio of Monterey, California for language training, where I learned Spanish, and I graduated with honors from that school. It was interesting. I was always interested in the language, and so I applied myself, and therefore it came easily to me. I had a lot of fun in California. I traveled around. We went to a couple of wineries and some of Hemingway's stomping grounds, and just different areas of interest, searching for the lone cypress, and that was fascinating. The only adverse encounter I had while I was there was when my son finally came down to stay with me. I had to get an apartment, and I felt I encountered racism there. Whenever I called on the phone to ask if the apartment was still available, I would be told, oh yes, we have various apartments or an apartment and no one's looked at it, and so please come on down. And the places were close to where I was going, so it would take 10 to 15 minutes to get there. And when I arrived, they'd look and say, oh no, we have someone else coming. And I explain I just called, and they'd say, well, someone already left a deposit on the place. So eventually, when I did get a positive response, it was surprising. But as a result of getting that apartment, we had problems because there was a troubled youth that lived next door, but I was not aware of. And he started leaving notes under the mat at my house saying they were starting up to clean up the neighborhood, and they were starting right there at on Watson Street where we were living. But I had no idea it was this person, because that boy, I spoke to him every day and he responded. And my commander told me that there was nothing they could do about it, or actually my supervisor said there was nothing they could do about it. And I kept getting notes. Eventually I borrowed a handgun, which I carried loaded with me at all times. Someone knocked in the taillight of my car while it was in a private underground parking garage, and it was just filled with nightmares for me. So eventually one of the senior officers recommended I go to the media, and as a result we were moved from that unit and put into government housing, guest quarters. And the day we moved, there was the boy had started a fire in a car that was parked directly below my apartment. And the FBI, the NAACP, and the media was all involved in that. It was in the news, on the television, and we found out that the FBI had been suspicious of him, so they did a little investigating, and they found in his desk at school a note that he had written where they planned to abduct my son, and that was devastating for me. Just the thought of it just really upset me. But we were glad to be out of there.
Right.
And that was the end of that training. When I arrived in Panama, my commander decided to send me to Guatemala for the total immersion training, for additional Spanish training, where we received training one-on-one. We lived with a family in Guatemala, and I guess the government has some sort of contract where you sleep there, have your meals there, 3 meals there, and you go to school and you have one-on-one, one instructor, one student. And it was really very rewarding. Saw a lot of poverty there, just for 30 days.
Oh, so that was just TDY?
To Guatemala.
Gotcha.
From Panama.
Okay.
But I actually worked in Honduras, providing early warning for the soldiers that were there as a linguist. So traveling in plain clothes along the northeast coast from city to city, collecting information from operatives that we had there, contacts who would give us information on any planned activities against the U.S. soldiers.
Okay. One question I didn't ask you, through your military service, up to this point at any rate, have you or any of the people in your unit had the unfortunate any events that led up to them having service-related injuries?
No.
Okay. All right. Same thing for Panama up to this?
I might have misunderstood you. Anyone that I worked with?
You
personally?
or anybody in your unit?
No.
Have you? Okay.
No, we had not.
You didn't misunderstand. That's the first time I asked you that question.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay, so how long were you in Panama anyway?
About 1.5 years.
Okay.
My headquarters was in Panama, but I actually worked in Honduras, where every few months we would go back to Panama to regroup, give our reports or anything, and then go back to Honduras.
Okay. And in Panama or Honduras, or where else did you travel in the region?
That was it.
Tell me about 2 of your most memorable experiences there.
My memorable experiences are always long. One was when when we were detained in Panama. We were driving in the mountains by a city called David, and we were detained by a roadblock where they asked for passports, and we had no intention of going anywhere. So we explained we didn't have passports with us. So they allowed us to pass. However, as we went further up the road, we were totally detained by armed Panamanian military, who at that point we found they had simulated gravesite for the U.S. President, Vice President, and Chairman of Joint Chief of Staff. They had with the gravesite with the cross and their names on the headstones and everything in place. So we were a little concerned. They kept us. They took our vehicle. There were 2 of us. They separated us. The guy that I was with, they put him on a Jeep, with 3 armed guards, and they took me, someone, a plainclothes, I guess a detective from their unit, took me in my vehicle to their main headquarters further up into the mountain. So it was a little terrifying. So we were detained for about 8 hours.
Wow.
And we were never afforded the opportunity to make a phone call.
Okay.
So that was the most memorable. And another one was, I'm thinking of Honduras. Oh, Honduras, when I went to meet an operative who gave me a package of, it was a backpack that they retrieved from some students that were, going to their university.
Right.
And in the backpack were little silver objects. Well, at the time, I did not know what those devices were. And when I got them back to our headquarters, I found that they were detonating devices. So I had this whole backpack.
C4.
Yes, so those were my most...
Are you thirsty?
No, thank you.
So, okay, that's memorable enough, that's for sure.
Yes.
Anything else besides that?
No, it was just wonderful, pleasant.
Okay, cool. All right, so at the end of that tour...
I came back to the States, and I was assigned to Fort McClellan, Alabama, where I worked as after there were 3 of us in the office, the special agent in charge, myself, and another agent. And when he left, shortly after I arrived, I became the special agent in charge.
Okay. And for the rest of the tour, were there any exceptional incidences?
No, from there I went to Warrant Officer School, and
Where was that?
back in, actually at Fort Benning, where we did the basic course. And then I went back to Fort Huachuca, Arizona for more counterintelligence training, more advanced training. And then I completed my tour at Fort Hood. So I started and ended my career at Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay. Oh, okay. And so that was, would you say you went in 89?
1980.
1980 and got out in 92.
Yes, I spent the entire decade of decadence in the military.
Okay. Okay. So, went back to Fort Hood and you wrapped it up?
Yes.
What did you do when you got out of the service?
I had a difficult time finding employment, so I remembered that there were recruiters from Dallas Police Department. So I used that contact information and went to apply for a job. But they were reorganizing at the time, but I did eventually get work for Grand Prairie Police Department in Texas.
What's the name of it?
Grand Prairie.
Gotcha. All right. And did you use your GI Bill for anything?
No, I had not.
Okay. All right. So how long were you, what did you do with the police department? What did you do?
I worked road patrol, and then I worked in, I can't remember what it's called, but it's working with the community. It's business community relations, where I worked in the very poor area that I think it was called Dalworth, that was predominantly black, but was ridden with crime, violent crimes, prostitution, drugs, lots of diseases, people, full of with AIDS, and just they were like zombies all night, walking constantly. Yeah.
Okay, and how long did you do that?
I was there for 7 years.
Wow. And what did you do after that?
I moved to sunny Florida, where I was employed by Palm Beach Police Department, and so I worked in Paradise on the island of Palm Beach.
Oh, okay. Hey, prior to, well, what awards, medals, citations did you receive while you were in the service?
I received several awards. I can't recall all at this time, but I know I received several Good Conduct Medals, Meritorious Service Medal, and I can't think of what else. Just Soldiers of the Quarter, just many things like that.
Okay. By the way, while you were in the service, how did you stay in touch with your family the entire time?
Wrote letters or telephone calls or visiting.
Right. Did you always have all the supplies that you needed while you were in the military?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What about pressure and stress? How did you respond to that?
I felt I did well. There was always someone there to support me.
Okay.
And if you're referring to any form of sexual harassment, there was really only one incident, and that was very early in my career, in the early 80s, where I think it was a sergeant major. I was an admin clerk at the time, and whenever I went into the office to collect the mail, he would just make all sorts of sounds like, things like that. And so it made me uncomfortable, but I never really said anything to anyone. And then I stopped picking up the mail. And one of the clerks that worked in his office said to me one day, "How come you never come to pick up the mail?" So I explained it to the guy, and he said, "That's not right." And so he said, "You need to come back." I went back that next day, and the guy was also there, and the sergeant major started in again, and I was just uncomfortable. So the guy made the comment to the sergeant major, telling him that he was making me uncomfortable. So the sergeant major asked me, "What did I make?" I said, "Yes, very uncomfortable, and that's why I never came up." So he stopped right away, and that was the end of that.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay. So, beyond that, anything else unpleasant?
No.
Okay. All right. So you were a police officer in Texas
Yes.
for 7 years.
Yes.
What did you do after that?
I was a police officer here in Florida.
Gotcha. Where? What city?
The town of Palm Beach on the island for
And how
6
did that
years.
go?
Extremely well.
Okay.
I worked road patrol, and then I applied. That was not perfect, but it was almost perfect. I applied to work in the detective bureau, but I feel that they had something interesting going on there, where I had 7 years of police work, an impeccable record, never been disciplined, always wonderful reviews, and always the highest raises. They put someone who had only been on the department 9 months, who had no prior police experience. They gave him the job of detective. And I found that as to be a slap in my face. And I know that that town is very politically driven.
Right.
And so I never got that assignment, but I did work in business community relations, where I was certified as a crime crime prevention practitioner for the
Right.
state of Florida.
Okay. Okay. All right. And how long did you? How long did you stay there?
6 years,
All right. And what year was that when you finished?
2006.
I know we're getting close now. So for the last, so we still have 8 more years to go. So what have you done for these last 8 years?
8 years I've been all over the place. In my heart, I am a vocalist. I love singing jazz, and I've done several benefit shows for the injured veterans at the Veterans Administration, the hospital, the CLC,
Right.
the Community Living Center, I believe it's called. I've done that. Also working as an assistant teacher in elementary school, and I've been substitute teaching. That's what helps put food on my table.
Right.
And I've been homeless here and there, and I've had assistance from the VA HUD, the HUD-VASH program.
Right.
I've had help in Georgia as well as down here. I'm currently being assisted by HUD-VASH.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think we are just about ready. Oh, so how did you feel about your officers and fellow your peers in the military?
I thought I had no problems.
Okay. So you haven't used the GI Bill for anything?
I'm currently using the GI Bill
Good.
for, I forgot about that. I attend Palm Beach State College in the evenings,
Right.
funded by the GI Bill.
Okay. And any close friendships that you maintained after the military? Up to?
Actually, about 3 weeks ago, I was contacted by one of my superior officers who I had not seen or heard from in 24 years.
Wow.
Called me, who Googled me and found out that I was a vocalist and wanted to hire me for a festival that they're having, a jazz festival they're having next year
Where?
in DC.
Ah, Washington. Okay, cool.
Yes.
So, did you join any veterans organizations?
Not really.
Okay. It's not a sin.
No. I'm trying to think. Just being...
You go to the CLC on your own, though?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
So you participate how often at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center?
I just go, I'll say once every quarter,
Okay.
something like that.
That's wonderful.
And I will participate in the Veterans Creative Arts Festival this year again. This will
Okay.
be my third time, I believe.
Okay. Last question is really like a combination question. It's two questions, but I'm going to just ask you the both of them simultaneously because they're so closely related. How did your service and experiences affect your life? And did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
No, I feel that my experience in the military just helped to make me a more rounded person. Mm-hmm. It helped me to see different cultures and understand about people all over the world. Okay. And it has not really any negative impact on my life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You think that we left anything out?
No, I think we covered quite a bit.
Quite a bit?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for this interview and want to also thank you for your service.
My pleasure.